Hello book lovers and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Harris and today I'm talking to author Michelle Spray. Michelle Spray is an additional needs mum living in Connecticut with her husband and their 4 children. Michelle understands bravery, not only as a mum of 2 children who have endured multiple surgeries, procedures and prodding, but she is also a scoliosis warrior. Her memoir, Growing Up with Scoliosis, became her first book on her journey as an author. Her second novella is a fictional depiction about her grandmother's journey with Alzheimer's called Lost Memories Found Hope, about which I interviewed her back in 2019. Today, however, we will be chatting about her latest book titled 1=6, a novel about alcoholism and domestic violence. Hi Michelle, first of all, welcome and thank you for coming back to talk to me on Book Talk Radio Club.
Oh, hi Claire, I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. 1=6, why that title?
Well, 1=6 is actually a revelation that the main character, Faith, makes at the end of the book.
Right.
Her husband, Frank, doesn't realize that his drinking is a problem, and Faith urges him to get help, but he thinks that she's exaggerating or just too sensitive. So 1=6 is when Faith realizes that 1 beer was never just 1, or 3 for that matter. 6 beers was 12 easily.
So here we have Frank and Faith, parents of a toddler and a special needs infant. But things aren't going too well, are they? Would you like to give Book Talk Radio Club's listeners an idea of what's going on?
Well, Kyle was born with something, and at the time they didn't know what. Actually, in utero, after the amniocentesis, they were telling them that they had a chance of having Downs or having trisomy 18, which is a severe mental, developmental, physical problem. So he could be in a vegetative state. But the odds in Faith's mind were not good enough. So the statistics were not strong enough for Faith to not take a chance on him. And Frank, the husband in the story, makes it pretty clear that if she chose life for him, that she would be doing it on her own. So when Kyle was born, he did not have Downs, he did not have trisomy 18, but he did have something, and they just didn't know what. So his first year of life was full of doctors and specialists trying to figure out what was, quote, wrong with him. And this and the fact that Jenna was a toddler who sometimes, loved him, and then sometimes knocked him in the head with a toy. But it all took its toll on Frank, who would leave the house with a slam of the door to get comforted at the bar, and leaving Faith to do everything on her own.
So Frank, what kind of man is he then? We know he's an alcoholic, but what's behind his apparent inability to cope with the family situation?
Frank doesn't think he has a problem. So
he's in denial.
Exactly. He's a spoiled, entitled man-child who never had any responsibilities in his entire life. So from growing up, his parents would make excuses for him, and in his marriage to Faith, she enabled him by taking care of everything, so he didn't have to. So she fell into a cycle of keeping peace. If she knew that something was going to upset him, it was just easier for her to take care of it. And if the baby was crying, Frank didn't know how to feed him, she would do it. If he punched the wall because he was, if he punched the wall because the toddler kicked him in the face while he was doing a diaper change, she let him have his temper tantrum and storm out. She was used to it. So it was more peaceful in the house when he wasn't home.
Sounds like it. And Faith, tell us about Faith.
She's complicated. She's strong but doesn't know it, and she's on this roller coaster of Frank's addiction and can't stop the ride. But she's hopeful, maybe too hopeful. But every time Frank is sober, Faith falls into a false sense of hope that they can become a loving family again, and that he loves her. But he's choosing. She wants him to choose family over alcohol, and he thinks he can quit on his own. But if he doesn't, he tells her it won't happen again. She believes him, but for how long? She never knew there was anything wrong with her grandfather having a beer in his hand morning, noon, and night, or working in the garden, and her grandmother shoving bread in him to soak up the alcohol. And she never realized that she was starved for her mother's attention, and she married a man who did exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Faith's growth, her journey, her strength, it's something that surprises even herself.
And now the two children. Jenna is the eldest and Carl the baby. So can you reveal what his special needs are, or do we have to learn that in the book?
Well, throughout the book, we see that Kyle has several doctors and specialists to find out what's wrong with him. He has services and therapists that Faith brings him to, or they come to the house to help him with his milestones, like tracking an object from left to right, or the typical milestones that babies would have, rolling over, sitting up, and feeding. But we do find out in the book that Kyle has a syndrome called 22q, or 22q deletion syndrome, also called DeGeorge syndrome.
What's that?
And it's basically missing a tiny piece of the 22nd chromosome, and it causes over 180 different symptoms.
Wow.
It could be heart, lungs, kidney, motor delays, learning difficulties, feeding, and speech. So, in many cases, nonverbal. So, when Kyle was born, they didn't know if he would ever walk or talk.
Right. Jenna believes it is her fault that her father is the way he is. I mean, that's heartbreaking. She's only 2. You managed to get into the heads of your characters, Michelle. It must have been hard writing some of the dialogue. I would have been bawling myself.
Yeah, I've done my share of that. Jenna has the strength that Faith could only hope for. You see her grow throughout the book as well, and as she gets a little bit older. But for her to have such wisdom as a toddler, peeking around the corner, watching her father slam the door and leave, you can only imagine what she was thinking. So the little bit that she does say in this book is very powerful.
People deserve to be treated fairly and kindly, and if people in your life treat you badly, you deserve to escape and build your own life, says one of your reviewers. However, it's not that easy. Can you give us an idea of how Faith finally escapes Frank?
She tried, and Frank didn't. So he was verbally abusive in front of the kids. She was a single mom in her own house, and she had had enough. So even she went with him to AA, so Alcoholics Anonymous. But when he stood up and said, "Hi, my name's Frank, I'm an alcoholic," he didn't really believe it himself. He figured he could have just one beer. She knew he couldn't. And so what made it difficult was when the good times were good, they were really good, or she thought they were. When the bad times were bad, she started to realize the good moments were so far in the past, she could hardly see them anymore. So she was getting the courage to download the divorce papers more than once. She always hoped that he would change. It took her a long time to come to the final decision about leaving. She loses her job right in the middle of it, and then she says she's stuck. What's she going to do? She can't leave with a special needs child and no job. So
there's always a proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. So what was the actual proverbial straw for Faith? What was the one thing?
Oh yeah, there were so many things. Waking up to him passed out in bed in a puddle of urine, cleaning up his vomit so the kids wouldn't see him, and his tantrums. He would make fun of her fat baby belly and the way she wore her hair up and the way he hated it. And, but one thing that happened, they went to visit his family in Florida, and they let him drink. They were in denial about it, and they told her she needed to lighten up and that it was okay for him to take the edge off because he worked so hard during the week. So what happened was the parents that he had idolized so much told him it was okay, and so he did. That's when she knew it would never change.
The strength and resolve to leave an abusive partner when there are no children is hard enough, but to do it when there are children involved, how does Faith find the strength? Does she have a close friend supporting her in her choice?
Oh, yes. First they went on this charade for a long time, didn't tell anybody. She tried living in the house and just avoiding him, but it just made him more angry. So her best friend Diana showed her how ridiculous it was. They would go to the movies and come back, and they watched the curtains flap back and forth while he was waiting for them to come in. It was taking for too long for them to come in, and Diana says, for better or for worse, doesn't means someone's allowed to make your life miserable.
Exactly.
And Diana was there for her the whole way.
Domestic abuse has been on the rise during the past year's lockdowns due to COVID. Here in the UK, we have a number of organisations that offer shelter, one of them being Refuge. What help is offered to victims of domestic abuse in the USA?
We have a number of organizations also: domestic violence shelters, Salvation Army, YMCA, domestic violence programs, and family justice centers. They would just have to look up the services available in their area.
According to Refuge, domestic abuse is a pattern of behaviour on the part of the abuser designed to control his partner. It can happen at any point in a relationship, including after you've split up. Is Frank controlling Faith with his alcoholic behaviour?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Interestingly enough, this also happens to men, but they don't admit it. It could be emotional, verbal, or physical.
Well, men are supposed to be strong, aren't they?
Right. They're the ones that are driving themselves to the hospital after a plate was thrown at their head, and then they're making excuses why they're bleeding. But when children are involved, it gives an open permission for the contact to never end. You can't break up with them once you have kids.
No.
After Faith moves out, Frank was saying, you did this, and the kids will know it's your fault. And how he says his tantrums and drinking were never really that bad.
Although 1=6 is a story about domestic violence, it's also a book of hope, not of despair. I can imagine another abused parent reading this and finding the courage to walk away. Even in the darkest moments of one's life, there's always some light, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, Faith had moments of light, and she had moments of hope that Frank would change. But eventually her hope turned inward. How would she find the courage to leave him and to do it on her own? But the fact is, she was actually doing it all on her own anyway.
I can't for 1 minute understand the anguish and the strength that single parents of special needs children experience, and especially the ones that have escaped an abusive partner. 1=6 is dedicated to them. Tell me why.
There comes a point when someone has had enough, and when it comes to a special needs parent, they can only handle so much. When something can be prevented, like cracking open another beer or listening to the people you're hurting, or at least making an effort to get help. After Faith realizes nothing would change, she put all her energy into her kids. Special needs parenting is hard.
You're already receiving wonderful reviews for 1=6, including Michelle Spray, in her latest novel 1=6, has taken the difficult issues of alcoholism and domestic violence, merged them with the challenges that come with parenting a special needs child, and woven all three into a story infused with courage and hope. Offset throughout by snippets of therapeutic wisdom, this book becomes a must-read for any woman wishing to escape an abusive family situation. Kudos. Michelle, you must be really proud of that interview.
Oh, I am. When a psychologist trained in someone's mental and emotional state tells you that your characters reveal snippets of therapeutic wisdom, that's exactly what I hoped for this book to do for women in the same situation.
That's brilliant. All right, but lastly, where can Book Talk Radio Club's listeners purchase 1=6?
It's available on my author page on Michelle Spray Books on Amazon.
Lovely. All right, well, thank you, Michelle. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club soon. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Lovely to speak to you, Michelle.
You too. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.